1 second to get on live on Facebook. All right, Martha, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, and thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Martha McDevitt-Pugh. I am a California voter, a lifelong California voter, and I live in the Netherlands. I've been chair of DA Netherlands in the past, and I'm currently a DNC member. And I'm really, really delighted to have so many people joining us today via live stream and here in person for what's going to be a really extraordinary event. Thank you for being here. Today, we're going to have some candidates from the California upcoming elections for the House. And it is said that this year, the Democrats keeping the House runs through California. And I'm somebody who hears California voters say from time to time, well, my vote doesn't really count. I'm in a blue district. I'm in a red district. Well, this is really our moment as California voters to get out there and make the difference. The 2022 midterms are really about the opportunity to elect a Congress that's going to fulfill on President Biden's agenda, and our democracy is at stake. And it's really turnout that's going to determine the outcome in November. And we are 6 million Americans living abroad of voting age, and our votes can be decisive in winning close races and ensuring that Democrats win their elections by a margin that cannot be challenged. That's very important. Our votes are really critical this year. Because California can really be decisive in keeping the House in Democratic hands. The districts have been redistricted, so we have all kinds of races that are going to be opportunities for Democrats to capture those, and also races where we really need to bring back our current representatives. So it's really important that we do that, and that's why we're organizing this series of events with California candidates, of which today is the first event. So whether you vote in a district with a competitive race or not, you likely have friends or family who vote in California. It's not about your vote or my vote or one vote. It's really about making this a wave year and all of us voting. And I really want to encourage everybody to make sure that you reach out to your family and friends, make sure they're registered to vote, and really be part of that wave. So today we're going to hear from 4 different candidates, 2 of them live, and I'm going to hand off now to Judith to introduce our first candidate.
And is Dr. Mahmoud here?
Yes.
Ah, great. Hello. Thank you so much. We're glad to see you. And I am really honored to introduce everyone to this wonderful man. He's a pulmonologist and a doctor of internal medicine. He and his family have lived in Southern California since 1999. And he's based his life work on a single principle taught to him by his parents, that helping others is our highest calling. He grew up thousands of miles away in a remote village in rural Pakistan. After receiving his medical degree, Dr. Mahmoud moved to America and later to California to practice medicine. He has spent his career as a physician helping people. For more than 20 years, he's helped patients overcome their health challenges and go on to lead fuller lives. He's treated thousands of patients in Southern California over the last 20 years. And just to let you know what a kind, thoughtful man he is, it's a rule in his medical practice. If a patient doesn't have insurance, his office won't ask for payment. That doesn't happen very often. I'm a nurse, so I know this firsthand. So Dr. Asif Mahmoud is running for Congress because families in his district need leaders who wake up every day to solve problems. So we are so pleased that you can join us today. Dr. Mahmoud, please.
Good morning, and thank you so much, Judith. Thank you so much for doing what you're doing. And honestly, more importantly, the work of registered nurse is such a challenging and time-consuming and dedicated work. We could not, nobody could work in the hospital if there was not a real good nurse. And I am more thankful to nursing staff all my life, my career life, than any other profession, because I see what they do. We come see a patient for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. They are there 8 or 12-hour shift and take care of all good and bad, up and down. Thank you so much. I took a little longer, but this is really close to my heart. And thank you to everyone who's here. And I know you all care about what is going on. She gave a very generous introduction about me, and I don't really need to go too much more in detail on that. But I want to tell you that I have been very sensitive and been always advocate, especially for human rights, whether they are in the community I live, whether they are in the state I live, whether they are in the country I live, whether it comes globally. Because I believe the first thing after food and shelter is your rights. And there has never been such a crucial and such a challenging and such a dangerous time in the history of America as it is today. I know every election we call it is very crucial. We must win, and it is very hard. But honestly, I can swear on this thing, there has never been more challenging time, and there has never been more risk on the rights. We got them for the struggle of tens of actually centuries. Roe v. Wade was there for 60 years. They are going to come on. That is just a one thing. They are going to come on other rights we have achieved. Voting rights isn't a huge issue right now. They want to really only dictate you where to vote and who can vote. That means democracy is at risk. Democracy is in danger. One fundamental value which America has different than the rest of the world, and that America promote and advocate every single time of American existence, is democracy, here at home and abroad. We believe that we need to have leaders who are doing the right thing for people, who are serving people. And if they are not doing right things, 2 years or 4 years later, we have the right to vote them out. They want to bring an authoritarian regime, the regime where they can do anything and they can suppress people. So we know from the last 5 years of experience, 4 years of our authoritarian president and 1 year the work after that, how crucial it has become. My biggest goal on this election would be, number one, bring somebody who care about people, somebody who wants to serve people, somebody who want to listen to people, their problems, their challenges, their sensitivities, and exactly the same way take that to Washington, D.C. and fight for them. I have done that from last quarter of century, and I promise you, nobody will be able to sway me on that. I have not taken money from any vested interest group, not oil companies, not pharmaceutical industry, not big PACs who want me to vote certain ways. I am part of the people. People run this campaign, and I will be speaking and talking on behalf of the people. The top agenda, the top thing will be women's rights to choose, reproductive freedom, gun safety, and voting rights. We have to, and we are doing. We are very fortunate to be living in California, and we're very fortunate to have several Secretary of States working towards that and making California much easier for everyone to vote. But lot more work needs to be done. California is not just for Californians. California is a limelight. California is a navigation. California is a leader. Whatever we do, that's what spreads the rest of the country and rest of the world. And I promise you, I will do everything in my power. And my humble request to you is, whoever is living abroad, whoever has friends or family over here are there, please register. Please register. And we have 30 days window to vote. So please don't put it to the until last minute. We need you. Every vote will count. My election, my opponent is going on TV today. She's so scared. This election will be divided in only 700 or maybe a couple of thousand votes, and your vote really matters a lot to us. And same thing for other candidates on this forum today. They are also in the same kind of fight, and we want to make sure that whoever, wherever they have their vote, please use your right and let us get to Washington, D.C. so we can serve people, we can save democracy, we can save women's rights, we can save rights of every other community which is at risk now. Thank you so much. I might have taken a couple of minutes extra, but I really appreciate it.
That's all right. I love your message. I love what you're all about. And yes, you're so correct. Our democracy is on the line and everybody needs to vote. We have a couple questions for you, and Karen Frankenstein from the AAPI caucus is the first one to ask you a question.
Thank you so much, Judith. Dr. Mahmood, it's so wonderful to hear you speak. It's really inspiring, and it's wonderful also to see members of our community being represented and running for office. It is so important. The Asian population in the US is the fastest growing racial group. In California, the 2020 caucus showed that the Asian American Pacific Islander community makes up 15.9% of the population. So which of the many AAPI issues would you be focusing on if you're elected, and how would this affect your local constituents?
Thank you so much. Before I start, I am really so thankful to AAPI community because that is my home, that is my family. And I am so, not just because I'm biased towards them, that is not only the fastest growing group, that is most enlightened group, visionary group, educated group, bring not only the voting rights and voting, they help economically in every other way. My first challenge in AAPI, not challenge, work on AAPI would be fight on hatred. We have seen our population has grown. We have seen we are making more progress, but we have seen exponentially increase in number of hate crimes against Asians, especially in California, especially in Orange County and Northern California, where Asian population is at higher numbers. And if we see my opponent who's running for office against me is also Asian, not a one finger point against those things, not a one little action, not a one little rally to go and stand with brothers and sisters and tell them, okay, I am not going to let anybody harass or bully or torture anybody because of the color of their skin, the shape of the face, the way they talk, the way they eat, or where they come from. This is America. Everybody's equal. And we respect those more who bring more to the society. That is what the normal law of humanity. And I really, my first goal will be to get on and get this hate rooted out of these communities and bring the sanity and bring the real American life where everybody love each other, everybody help each other. Neighbors don't help because they are Democrats or Republican. Neighbors don't help because the next door neighbor is black or white. Neighbors help because they're all American, they're all human, and they all should be all respected. And we should be there for anybody who's in our community, our society. And we should just resolve our differences by dialogue. And we should cherish on our similarities and our common things and our strengths than to be dividing ourselves because of these things. And my first goal will be not only here in Orange County, not only California, all over the country. I know AAPI community all over the country. I will travel all over and take this message to Washington, D.C. and bring sanity and bring regulations if needed, if that helps to finish or cut this hate.
Wow, impressive answer. Thank you so much. And we can really get a feel for your sense of principles and values. I love that. So now we're going to Ann Hess, who is the chair of the Global Women's Caucus and a California voter. In fact, we're both heading to San Francisco soon.
I'm on my way on Sunday. Can't wait. Well, thank you so much, Judith. And thank you, Dr. Mahmood. Yeah, well, okay, my question. The Kansas victory and recent California statewide polls show us that Democrats can fight for abortion rights and win, even among independents and Republicans. So reproductive freedom is sure to be a mobilizing factor among swing voters in your district as well. Democrats already know that you'll do everything you can to protect abortion access once you get to Washington. But for today, can you tell us a bit about your strategy for right now, for reaching out specifically to those crucial swing voters without alienating our true blue base? And what is your message for all of us today that we could use in the fall to encourage our traditionally right-leaning friends and family to go ahead and cross that red to blue line?
Thank you so much. And really, this is a moment of action. And who could know this better than a physician? And I am not only pulmonologist, I'm also internal medicine. And many times in my life, people have come to me and asking for advice about contraception, the way of contraception, about abortion, terminating pregnancy, or keeping it. And I know how crucial those decisions are. And there is not a shred of doubt. Those decisions should and must be only made by women, or at the most with the help of her physician. No authority, no government, no agency has no role of interfering at any level. We saw, thank you for mentioning about Kansas, but more recently, last night, we saw in New York, we won that battleground state in New York, that seat, which they did not expect that we will win. They thought that inflation and other factors are going to take it away. We won it, and only one principle we won it: women's rights to choose and reproductive freedom. And believe me, Orange County might be a little conservative in California, but it's a lot less conservative than Kansas and the area in New York we won. We really have a right message, the true message, very transparent, clear message. Not only that, my opponent has also very clear. She voted black and white no. No on reproductive freedom, no on contraceptive rights, no on gun safety control, no everything. So we are going to highlight women's rights to choose and reproductive freedom. We already are doing it. I'm happy to report that we had our TV shoot yesterday. We're going to be going on air soon. They are so scared. I think I heard that she's going on TV today. So she's going that early on TV. That means she's scared. What we need is, it is not only people who are living in my district or Orange County, anybody, whoever, wherever they are, phone call, text message, send an email. I know anybody, at least API community has close ties to Orange County because there is a huge Asian population there, both in District 40 and 45, Jay Chan's district. We want you to be really reaching out to anybody. And people you need to convince them they need to reach more, because you might know 1 or 2 people who live in the district, but they might know 10, 20, or 30 people. We need to get the message, and not only one time, not only to them, we need to keep on reminding them. And once the ballot comes out, we want to make sure those people are acting on that. Honestly, we are very confident we're going to flip this district. That is why we are red to blue. We are bringing every resource possible, but you are our big resource. Please, next 78 days, dedicate to this thing, whatever you can do on mine one, on other 6 districts which are in California, red to blue, and anywhere else you can do, because it is very crucial to keep majority in Congress, because my opponent has threatened to codify abortion. And I promise you, we will do everything possible to codify Roe v. Wade so that this matter is done and solved forever. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'd love to hear what you're saying. Great answer. Thank you very much, Doctor. So now we're going to go to Carol Moore, who is a member of the Taxation Task Force and a member of the Democrats Abroad States team.
Yes. Dr. Mahmood, thank you very much for your positions on these critical issues. But I'm going to turn to an issue that affects Americans abroad. As my colleague mentioned, over 6 million have a very difficult tax situation. The United States is the only developed country in the world that requires its overseas citizens to file a US tax return. At the same time, we have to file a tax return in the country where we live. And this is complex, costly, and burdensome. For example, in the UK where I live, the UK has a different tax year. In addition, banks are not happy with some of the regulatory requirements abroad that the US is imposing. It causes difficulties. People cannot open overseas bank accounts. They don't have access to effective, tax-efficient retirement funds, nor can they make financial investments for the future. Can we count on you to work with us and support tax reform that will provide relief for Americans living abroad? Thank you.
Thank you so much. And it's a very important issue. There are 2 areas which are honestly almost broken. One is our immigration system, and other one is our taxation system, especially for people abroad. I want to make one thing very clear. I don't have too much sympathy for people who are making billions of dollars and living abroad. So I'm not going to guarantee on that. Yeah.
Most
So
of
I'm
us
not
are
going to
middle
guarantee on that.
class.
But
Most of us are
for-
middle class.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. For middle class people, we need to do everything and anything possible to make life easier, to not just pinch in every penny out of them, whatever they can, and be just on that thing. I promise you that this will be on my top of my agenda, and I'll work with you to bring the tax reforms, make it as simple as possible, as friendly as possible, and most importantly, working with the people like you over there so that we know the exact situation and do that. And I will be always available and I'll do that. The only thing is, which I said exception, is those people who are making billions of dollars and just trying to hide all those taxes, which could be used for good causes here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Carol, and thank you, Dr. Mahmood. Dr. Mahmood, do you have time to stay after and answer some questions from the audience?
I'm going to be staying another 10 minutes, if it's okay.
Another 10 minutes only? Okay, because
I
Christy
have,
Smith has a hard stop as well. So we have one more
I will stay,
question.
actually,
and-
I will stay 20 minutes. I have to drive to another event, so then
Oh,
I
of
have an
course, you know
event
you're
with
so
Senator
busy with
Padilla
this
and
campaign.
Congressman
We-
Brad Sherman, so I don't want to be late there.
I understand it. We're so appreciative you're here. So one more question, and this is from the Disability Caucus, and Marnie Daly is going to ask you this question.
You're muted.
Muted, dear.
Sorry about that. I want to say thank you so much because your enthusiasm and your commitment and what you have to say is it's good because I spend a lot of time with a headache thinking about the political situation. So yay. And one other thing, just to pile on a little bit about what people abroad need is we also don't get our Medicare after 50 years of paying for Medicare paying into the system. I can't collect it because I live abroad. And that's something we will want to talk to you about, but I won't ask about that now. You know better than most people the importance of good, accessible, affordable healthcare for people with disabilities. But given the direction the Republicans are going that we've been talking about consistently here, what do you think are the dangers ahead for this community, and what should we what should we do to make sure people understand what is at stake in this election?
Yeah, so I'm going to cover your first part too, because that is really heart and soul to me. That is really bread and butter to me. Healthcare needs so much attention. And my top thing on healthcare would be women's health and reproductive freedom and contraceptive rights should be included in every single health plan. No health plan is completed without those two aspects, and we will make it mandatory because right now health care plans are really deficient of both of them. The second part is mental health, which nobody's talking, which is in really need of that. And you talked about Medicare. I agree with you 100%, and I promise you that is also on my agenda, and I've studied that. People who qualify for Medicare, more people should be qualified. That's what my position is. But people who are qualified for Medicare, whether they are in Alaska, whether they are in New York City, whether they are sitting in Guatemala or in Kuala Lumpur, Medicare should take care of them because we give them benefit that we are going to take care of their health care. We did not say we will not take care of the healthcare if they cross the border. And if there is anything to that, we should work on that because healthcare can be very expensive. The insurances can be very expensive in certain countries, and we cannot let our people suffer because for certain reason they are in different country. So I'll work on that. Our major challenge at this time is our people to get out to vote. This was looking very bleak a couple of 3 months ago. We have seen a really huge improvement in that. People are enthusiastic now. People are fired up. And I honestly tell you, in my district, I am in the district whenever I'm in town, people are so fired up. We got more volunteers. We got record volunteers anybody ever had gotten. And people really care about things, but we need to keep this going because we don't want to have that peak now. And when the time election comes, that peak is gone. We want to keep on building on that, because in my district, I can assure you, and same thing I can assure you on Jaychan district, which is a neighboring district, if we can just bring Democrats to come and vote, we can win. So we need to do anything and everything possible to keep this enthusiasm. We need to keep this importance of the issues, whether it's a women's right to choose, whether it's in gun safety, whether it's in a climate, whether it's in a voters' rights, but we need to make sure they all understand and they use the right to vote and get out to vote. So our major challenge is to get out to vote. That's what we need to work on. We are trying to do everything possible to bring the resources, and everybody on this call, I will request whatever resource you can bring, you can introduce to some people, you can call somebody, you can introduce us some donors. We are willing to take any and every help possible.
Thank you so much. I wish I lived in your district so I could vote for you. You are so inspiring, really. And thank you so much for offering to stay a little later, because now I'm going to introduce Asha, who will introduce us to Christy Smith. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I am beyond pleased to introduce candidate Christy Smith. Christy Smith is a 40-year resident of the city of Santa Clarita in the congressional district she's currently running to serve. In 2020, she ran against Republican Congressmember Mike Garcia and earned 36,000 more votes than any other Democrat in the district's history, and came within a very famous number for many of us abroad, 333 votes of winning in one of the closest congressional races in the nation. And this was a race that we talked about in meetings after. As a distinguished California state legislator, she authored 9 bills focusing on education reform, homeowner protections, college affordability, and good governance, which were signed into law by Governor Gavin Newsom. This legislative package also included a landmark measure, now law, that removes barriers for survivors of human trafficking to access victims' compensation. In addition, she helped shepherd historic investments in emergency management and also secured significant amounts of money for the free clinic of Simi Valley, Santa Clarita Valley Senior Center, and the College of the Canyons. Prior to the state assembly, she formerly served 2 terms as a governing board member of the highly successful Newhall School District. And she also chaired the successful Measure E Prop 39 bond campaign for the Newhall District, which provided $60 million in resources for facility and technology upgrades. She currently lives in Santa Clarita with her husband, Philip, and her 2 daughters. And I just want to extend an extremely warm welcome to a fellow UCLA poli-sci alum, Christy Smith.
Thank you so much, Asha. It is a pleasure to be back with you all. I apologize for any background noise. At present, I am sitting in a waiting area at San Francisco Airport, headed back down to Southern California. So apologies for the noise. Yes, I am so glad that you mentioned the 333 votes that separated me from my opponent, Mike Garcia. This is a rematch between the 2 of us, but over the last 2 years, seeing the votes that he has taken in the House, his pure comments as recently as the last couple of days, which I roundly condemn for their anti-Semitic tone. He is someone that doesn't deserve to be in that seat. And those 333 votes just really strike at my heart, you know, everything from January 6th to his recent comments. I am so dedicated to the prospect of winning this time and ensuring that he no longer has the opportunity to serve. And with all of your help and outreach, and I know there's a district voter on with us today. Hi again, Aaron. We will be able, you know, to overcome those 333 votes. Redistricting here in the state of California, where we do that redistricting by a citizens independent commission, meant that we lost the Republican stronghold of Simi Valley in this district. And we are now all North Los Angeles County. So my loss was those Ventura County voters, but we can't take anything for granted, given that this could possibly be, you know, a lower turnout because of the midterm. And like Dr. Mahmoud, we are working very hard, our activists and our team working very, very hard to ensure that we really ramp up turnout to make sure that this is a seat that we win. Issues that are important to me, important to the district, of course, as Dr. Mahmoud alluded to, saving and defending our liberal democratic institutions. And NBC just came out with a poll this week saying that that has moved to the top spot, top of mind for most American voters, not just Democrats, but all American voters. That gives us a nice, big, cross-cutting platform to start conversations with voters in this district. Here as well, environmental concerns. We are a district that has seen multiple of the Southern California wildfires where people are evacuated from their homes and neighborhoods, sometimes as many as 30 to 50,000 families at a time. And then once that fire has passed, unfortunately, many of them are not getting their fire insurance renewed. And at the same time, we're undertaking significant water conservation efforts in Southern California, where we're so dependent now on Northern California water. And we're beginning to see that challenged and stressed as well, along with our Western states allies in water. So environmental issues, again, a great cross-cutting issue for us to talk to all of our voters. It impacts everyone. Of course, for me, very personally impacted by the overturn of Roe with the Dobbs decision. Not only am I the mom of 2 young adult women who I want their freedoms protected, regardless of the state they happen to be in at the time, but it's a very personal thing that I've endured. I am a woman who has gone through a miscarriage, as well as 2 very high-risk pregnancies, have absolutely had to make that decision for myself. But if any of those decisions had ever been criminalized and I had suffered penalties because of that, I probably wouldn't have been here speaking to all of you today with this opportunity. And so it is so powerful when we think about the issue, and really at its heart, again, a fundamental constitutionally guaranteed issue of freedom. That's what makes it a cross-cutting issue. And we saw that in the results of the Kansas ballot initiative to protect abortion there. We saw people cross streams where we thought they might vote, more Republican, more conservative, male voters, female voters, Republican, independent voters, all joined together in that coalition to defend this fundamental right and freedom. And my opponent, Mike Garcia, is someone who not only signed the amicus brief to the Supreme Court to overturn Roe, he is also a co-author of the Life Begins at Conception Act, which is the Republican roadmap for outlining not only abortion in the United States, but access to contraception. And we know they're serious about it. And contraception, as we know, is healthcare. Abortion is healthcare. These are fundamental rights that they are using at this moment as a cultural wedge, and Americans aren't falling for it. And we need to continue to draw that out for people to make sure they understand the contrast and the distinction and just how extreme my opponent, Dr. Mahmoud's opponent, are on this issue. So, plenty to talk about in the district. And of course, the success of the Biden administration. We are, like everywhere else across the country, full of families and people who have struggled, because of pandemic caused inflation, who really need an opportunity to grow their own personal economy, to be able to earn more wages and have protected healthcare benefits, to be able to get by. And we're seeing that happen now. The Inflation Reduction Act, the American Rescue Plan, all really important pieces of the Biden agenda, which he passed under extraordinary odds and circumstances that we all need to be boasting about and be proud of because of the turnaround and the recovery that has been possible under his leadership since the end of the Trump administration. It's just astounding, coming out of the pandemic, doing everything he has to start to address inflation by loosening up supply chains and getting money in people's pockets across all of these very important bills and measures that have been passed. So we've got a great story to tell, and we know that voters are with us on the issues. And so where we need to stand firm is in our beliefs. And, we are here to protect and defend democracy. We are here to ensure that on these really important issues going forward, American voters' voices will be heard, that their vote will be counted. And, alarmingly, that's just not true, potentially in some really important states. And we, going back historically, states' rights and versus what is the right and responsibility of the federal government has been an important ongoing debate. But I think fundamentally, you cannot argue that individual bodily autonomy and freedom and the right to vote are things that should matter depending on which state you live in. So looking forward to answering your questions as well, and I'm grateful to be here.
Thank you so much, and for taking the time while at the airport to give a really compelling speech and also to speak so personally to reproductive rights. So on that note, I want to turn over the mic to Ann Hess of the Global Women's Caucus to ask a question on this issue.
Thanks for taking my question, Christy. I really appreciate it. Thanks for your time. Yeah, so as I said, we've learned from the victory in Kansas and New York and from all these polls that Democrats can win on this abortion rights issue, even among independents and Republicans. And reproductive freedom is surely going to be a mobilizing factor among your swing voters in your district as well. We know what your plans are when you get to Washington, but I'm worried that your opponent is a little bit shy to talk about his record on the record right now. He's backing away from it a little bit, if you ask me. I don't know how you feel about that, but for today, can you tell us a little bit, under this situation where he's really not willing to talk about what he's already done, his track record. Can you tell us about what your strategy is for the coming weeks to reach out specifically to these 300 voters, these really important, crucial swing voters without putting off our true blue base? And what message would you have for all of us listening that we could use this fall to encourage our traditionally right-leaning friends and family to go ahead and cross that red to blue line?
Sure. I like the way you frame the question. So incredibly important. There are so many people who consider themselves independent voters or who are registered Republican who don't identify with what is happening in the GOP at this moment. And so for me, it has been a matter of by being very present in the community, by being available, accessible, being willing to have conversations across the political spectrum, because when I prevail in this election, these are all my constituents. I will be representing everyone in the 27th district, meeting people where they are and hearing them out, but especially on, as I mentioned, prior, these are issues of fundamental freedom. And if we are going to be in an era where something like a person's healthcare choices are going to be taken away from them based on gender, what's next? Where does that slippery slope end? And as you pointed out, my opponent and others like him who are on that extreme faction of the party can't answer that and won't answer that. And that's troubling to voters. If you can't get somebody on record about where does it end and why did they start down this path to begin with, like what are the fundamental principles that make them think they have the ability to have the right to take away their others, it's really telling. And so I will be doing as many public appearances as possible. We are starting a series of roundtable conversations in the district, everything from veterans' rights and benefits to disability rights, protecting Medicare and Social Security. And then we will also be doing town halls. So my opponent can run and hide, but I plan not to. And where he is unwilling to talk about his record, we will absolutely be communicating his record to our voters.
Thank you so much for that excellent answer. And I'm now going to turn it over to Carol Moore to ask the question near and dear to many of us.
Oh, Christy, thank you so much for running. We need to get rid of Republicans like Garcia. I am actually a Florida voter, so I'm going to be working to get rid of more Republicans, I hope, having just had a good primary. But my question is really going to shift gears a bit. Is a problem facing all Americans abroad, which is the way the US requires overseas citizens to file US tax returns, even though we all have to file tax returns in our country. No other country requires that, not France, not Germany, et cetera, et cetera. So it's complex, costly, and burdensome. Causes difficulties when we try to open bank accounts, access retirement funds. We can't find tax efficient retirement funds that work with both countries. Can we count on you to work with us and support tax reform that would provide relief for Americans abroad?
100%. And it's so critical as we are in this era of having a truly global economy. We know that people leave the continental United States for various reasons, either work related or retirement related. There should not be an undue burden placed on them. for making that move if it's right for them and their family. So I absolutely would be willing to engage in that conversation, be a leader on the issue. We're experiencing it very personally in my family. My daughter in about 3 weeks is headed over to Manchester, UK to start her graduate study program there. And it has concerned herself. She said, how am I going to balance, grad school? I know I need to have a part-time job while I'm here. I'm going to have to be filing taxes in 2 places, and I'll be on my own for the first time having to do that. So it really is a burden that we need to rethink. No one should be in further economic jeopardy based on making a move that's right for their family.
Well, thank you. And I hope she joins Americans Abroad in Manchester. Thank you.
I just sent her the website. So yes, thank you for posting that.
Thank you.
Amazing. And on that note, I'm going to quickly turn it over to Karen Frankenstein to ask a question from the Global AAPI Caucus.
Thank you so much for speaking with us. So the Asian population, as I said earlier, it's really the fastest growing ethnic group in the US, and also one of the bigger minority groups in California. And I'm wondering, what are you currently doing to reach out to voters in the AAPI community, and what are your plans for representing them in Congress?
We have been in regular contact with the organizations on the ground representing the AAPI community. It is a voting group that is really important to us. They are second only to our Hispanic voters in terms of demographics across the district. So very important part of the community. A community group I worked very closely with while I was in the state legislature and the school as well, based on shared common issues and interests. And depending on what the new balance of language preferences is in the district, in the past we have sent out specific campaign materials in various related languages. We haven't done that deep dive on our AAPI community for this cycle yet, but we will, because we definitely do multilingual outreach. And just again, making sure that everyone feels welcome and has a seat at the table. And so on my current campaign staff, as well as previously on my state official staff, we very deliberately hire a staff that looks and reflects the district demographic, and will continue to do so. But again, also about throwing the doors open wide, hearing people and meeting them on the issues that are so important. And this is another really important area of contrast between myself and my opponent, where I have leaned into the issue, particularly in the COVID environment, where we knew that AAPI hate was on the rise. My opponent wouldn't even vote for a House resolution condemning those acts of hate and recognizing those acts of hate. And I just think that's an absolutely abhorrent decision. So incredibly important, group of folks for us across the district, and they align with the issues. Again, rather than, there goes an earpod, segmenting out simply based on national origin, but really on issues. API voters are with us on things that are important for our platform.
Thank you so much for that answer. And then on to our last scheduled question. You spoke to the wildfires that are happening in Southern California, water issues. We're also seeing, for those of us in Europe and around the globe, a lot of changes in our environment lately. And so for this last question, we're going to turn to Inga Kemtrup from the Global Environment and Climate Council for her question.
Thank you very much, Christy. Really appreciate your being here today, and I'm really glad you mentioned those fires. We like to think that California has been at the forefront of dealing with the climate crisis. It's a region that suffers the serious consequences of climate change, including fire, droughts, floods, et cetera. The state has also been an early adopter of climate-friendly technologies and policies. So I'm curious, what kind of lessons, both positive and negative, can California offer the federal government as it moves forward, especially with some of the bills that are being passed with more ambitious climate-focused policies and programs?
I love this question. Thank you so much, because as you rightly mentioned, California has been a driver in pushing domestic climate policy. And so I think, what we just saw in the Inflation Reduction Act investment in climate, California has led the way in kind of framing what that debate needs to look like. There are a number of other pieces of climate reduction that we've discussed here in California. I think chief among them is this idea that we're starting to talk about in California, the legislative levels, that we have to go beyond the idea that what we each do in our individual capacity to reduce our own climate footprint is but a drop in the bucket compared to what we see across whole industry sectors. That really needs to change. And we changed that narrative because we wanted, more buy-in, of course. We wanted everybody participating in reducing our impact on climate change. However, we're in so doing, the way that we've reframed it, unfortunately, I think has left some of those greatest perpetrators, the big polluters, out of the conversation in a way that holds them truly accountable. So what I'd like to see us do now is California has also been one of the first to try to start to address use of single-use plastics. And that needs to be a national conversation as well, because it goes hand in glove actually with the drought conversation as well. Microplastics are not only contaminating our landfills, but when they end up in our water system and degrade, it's creating water contamination. So you couple that with a drought and it really limits our ability to have a clean, usable water supply. So it's something that we have to address immediately on the water front, but then also just, purely on the manufacturing and production front, it is something that also contributes to drastic climate change. And we need to stop thinking about convenience, and start thinking about recycling and reuse and the permanence of objects that we use. And I'd like to see that as being part of the larger national framework, and also what we do to change our energy delivery infrastructure. We have moved aggressively here in California, so to harden our energy grid, we need to continue to do that. But we need a plan for a national grid that is transitionable to clean, renewable energy sources, reliable and sustainable. And I think that's the next phase of this planning. How do we achieve that across the country, given regional climate challenges and weather systems? But it has to be addressed. We, like a lot of our infrastructure, our energy delivery system is simply, outdated and unsustainable. So plenty of work to do. We'll love to see the ideas coming out of California when I'm in DC, from my former assembly colleagues, and we'll keep moving the needle and making the big push from California, where we see day to day what our changes in action have meant for our communities. Cleaner, breathable air. We're much more aggressive now, much more responsive in times of water crisis to addressing that, and we need to take that model nationwide.
Thank you so much for that excellent answer. And it's an issue that generally I've seen amongst my friends, both in California and across the globe, that especially for young people, they're really eager to see movement in this direction. So thank you so much for that excellent answer and taking the time out again before your flight to come speak with us. I'm going to turn it over actually to Judith to just check us on time. And thank you again, really appreciate it.
So thank you very much, Christy Smith, and have a safe flight. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Asha, for leading that section. And Dr. Mahmoud, if you're still here, if you haven't had to leave yet, we can take one question from the audience for Dr. Mahmoud.
He's gone.
I see him here on the
he'll be back. Hi,
Oh.
Judith. He'll be back shortly.
Okay. It was bad timing, huh? We could have asked another question of Christy Smith. So shall we talk about the districts in the meantime? Will he be here? Is this Hanai?
Hania, yes.
Hania.
So I just sent him a message. He should be back on with us shortly. Yeah.
Okay.
Give it a minute or two. Yeah.
All right. Martha, do you want to say something about voting and how important it is right now? Do you want to?
I'm always happy to say something about voting and how important it is. And I think we've heard quite a few things already about that. I just want to remind people that today is a month away from our ballot drop day. So September 24th, write that in your calendars, be aware of that. That's the day that everyone who's registered to get a ballot sent to them abroad should get their ballot. And if you're a California voter and you're getting your ballot by email, you should get a link that day to allow you to download your ballot. So we have 45 days to do all of our voting. We get them early. So really important that you have put in a request and asked for your ballot to be sent to you and that that's updated. And if you've never voted abroad before, it's really important that you send in a form to ask for that. So you can do that on votefromabroad.org. It'll take you through the whole process. You put in your voting address, you put in your address abroad, you fill in the information and you can send that form in by the mail. It's handy to have a printer if you can do that, or you can, if you've already registered to vote, you can upload those forms. So the wizard will take you all the way through that process. Really important to do that. If you have voted in one of the last 4 elections, you should get your ballot, but you know what? It's like an insurance policy. If you send in the form, then you really have all your rights and you can challenge it if there's any issue getting your ballot. So I want to encourage everybody to do that. The form will ask you for a driver's license. You do not need to have a California driver's license in order to vote. You can register with the last 4 digits of your social security number. We have a fantastic help desk at votefromabroad.org. So if you have any issues or questions, you can ask them there. And you can follow up with your local election officials because, you know, usually they're just really, really great and knowledgeable. Once you set in your request for a ballot, you should follow up by email or give them a call, use Skype or whatever service you can just to check and make sure it's received and that you're going to get your ballot. And again, you should get your ballot on September 24th. You can get it sent to you by postal mail, but you know, if you have a printer, it's very convenient to have it sent to you by email. So those are some of the nuts and bolts of voting. Again, I hope everybody's already set up and has already requested their ballot. But if you haven't done that yet, there's still time. In fact, you can grab your smartphone or open a browser right now and do that. And I have one more link I'm going to drop into the chat. Just if anybody has any questions about how to get in touch with your local election officials or anything else like that, we have a page on votefromabroad.org that will take you to the site where you can find out all the information for your local officials, how to contact them by email or by phone, and answer all your questions about California. So please do that if you haven't already. And thanks to everybody who's already all set up to vote.
Fabulous. Thank you very much for all that information. I hope everybody took notes and you're ready to go. Is the candidate back now? Yes. So I'm sorry if I pronounce your name incorrectly. Malika? Malika, could you unmute yourself and ask Dr. Mahmood your question about
HR 40. Yeah, this is
HR
actually
40, yes.
both candidates, and it may be very new for everyone else. It's a bill that if it doesn't pass in January, if they don't start moving it, we'll have to start again. It's not just about reparations. It's a call to put together a task force to study and to find ways of how do we eliminate systemic racism from the country. It's not about giving out paychecks. The first thing is to really study it. And the thing with this, I know right now, it may not be a hot topic for many candidates because everybody's kind of riding on the abortion issue. I don't mean this in a negative way. It's the issue to take, yeah? Homelessness, climate change, eviction moratorium, these are issues to take. So I'm not asking either one of you to make that your front issue. I'm only asking you to go vote for it to get it through. You know, if you have to whisper, it has to go through. Because in reality, the whole thing from the Black Lives Matter movement is, people say, oh, all lives matter. You know, when we're talking about extinction of polar bears, we don't start talking about that tigers are being killed in Africa. It is a genocide light, what's going on in America. And what happens, this systemic racism has to go because it's the only healing for the whole country, for everyone. So this HR 40 is a bill that's only asking to form a task force to study this, to come up with ways to get rid of it. You know, it has to be passed. So I appeal to you, to Christy Smith it was, yeah, that I don't think it's something to put out as a forerunner because most people are not interested, they don't know, but please educate yourself and at any point educate others. It needs to be done because America will never be whole until we solve this issue. And
Thank you so much for that statement. Do you have anything you'd like to say about that, Dr. Mahmood?
Oh, there is no question. I think every Democrat and every patriotic U.S. citizen completely agree what you are saying. And people have sacrificed so much. And obviously, you have a special request for our African American and Black community because they have sacrificed more than anybody. And it is honestly because of sacrifices of our forefathers, we are where we are today. And there is basically, we agree with everything what you said, and we need to keep on working on that. And somebody like me, a person of color and a immigrant and a Muslim and a Californian, I come in all those categories people would like to harass. And definitely I will be on it. And definitely that needs to be discussed, not only discussed, that needs to be brought on the table to root this out. Hate, as we said, I said early in my speech, the comments, that we need to get this hate rooted out, not only AAPA community, for the other communities, the Latino community, for Black community, for other. There's a huge amount of hatred going on against Jewish community at this time, huge rise in that. And we need to address all of them. So yes, definitely agree with you.
Thank you so much. I know that you have to get on the road and we don't want you to be late for your event. We are so appreciative that you joined us for this event. Best of luck. We want you to win. And
Thank
great
you
having you here.
Thank you so much. Looking forward for your whatever way we can get the support. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Great.
Bye-bye.
So now Asha is going to talk to us about all the changes in the districts that occurred because of redistricting. You may be in a brand new district and you don't even know it. So Asha, please.
Yeah, so I'll keep it short because I realize some of us are much more kind of political wonks than others. But I think the first slide basically captures my message. And then from there, we can see how to go. So I'm just going to open this. Let's see.
You want to come back?
Can everyone see this? Okay. Yeah, we're good. All right. If there's one slide you can share with every Californian you ever know, it would be this one, which is, I think people forget just what diversity means, really. And diversity doesn't mean that we're an all blue state. It means that we have all sorts of different groups that are represented. And so if there's one map that I would just really encourage everyone to share or to talk about with their friends and family, it is honestly this one. And why is that? California Dems had a very poor showing in 2020, actually, losing 3 House seats. And we have the most Republican districts in our state, except for Texas and Florida. And we forget that. And so we have a huge opportunity right now to be the reason that the Democratic Party is able to hold the House. We have districts that are extremely flippable, and we also have districts we need to hold on to with all of our might. So there's I'll put the links in the chat as well, but there's kind of 2 tools to kind of see how your district boundaries have changed. And it's really, really important to share these resources with people, especially people abroad, and make sure that they double check, because they may very well have moved from a safe district into one that is a flippable district or vice versa. And it's very confusing with the numbers as well, because we have so many districts. It's very hard to keep track whether you're California 42 or now California 43 and what those boundaries are. So please do look at the resources and share them with friends and family and your community who may not be sure whether they're still in the same district or not. There were a lot of changes and a lot of people actually did move districts. So this is from the Cook Political Report, and it's a little bit old. It's about a month old now, but I just want to again emphasize, if you look at this, how many California districts are on this report. And we were so lucky that we were able to have the candidate from California 27 talk to us today. And just as a preview, we're going to have more candidates coming to speak with us again in October. And we're hoping to actually speak with every candidate that is on this list from California. But there is some, depending on what report you look at, between 8 to 12 districts in play in California. And again, that is more than any other state. So where are things really fluctuating for various different reasons? I'm going to go through my own personal kind of grouping of where to think about how things are changing. And the first one is the coastal suburbs of Southern California. So we're going to hear from Mike Levin in just a minute through a recorded message. But this is an area that is changing both demographically and in terms of just who is Republican and who is a Democrat. I know actually my in-laws are from Vista, California, so I'm very familiar with this area as well. And one thing that you've noticed with this area is increasingly more and more people moving into these areas to commute into San Diego or LA or work from home, which means we're getting an increased amount of young people into these areas. We're also getting an increased amount of minority groups in these areas, and it's really changing the dynamics. Next, the district that we just heard from Christy Smith and Mike Garcia. This is up in northern LA County, Lancaster, Palmdale, Santa Clarita. While it's not a well-off district as the one that we just discussed, it is also a commuter district. An inland commuter district. And you're going to see again that for similar reasons, you're seeing a real shift between the Republican and Democratic dynamics in this district due to it being a commuter district. And again, we just saw from California 40 with Dr. Asif Mahmood. This is a district, as you can see, unlike the first two we just talked about, that is carved out in a way that's not intuitive. This is one of the ones where, you could say Chino Hills or Anaheim, and you wouldn't be quite clear which district you're in, whether you're in California 40, 47, or 46. So again, please do check. Again, this is a repeated theme. This is another commuter district. So people are starting to move further and out and commuting into various areas for jobs, and it's really changing the dynamics of these districts. And while this is more inland and not quite as well off as Levin's district, it does share a lot of similar characteristics. And the last one for today on the California inland and Central California communities, we have Josh Carter, who we're going to hear from in just a minute, who's in the Stockton area. This district, he has moved districts. So he was in a different district and he's now running this district. So he's an incumbent from another district. And so he's new to this area. Unlike the previous three districts I just talked about, where you're seeing an increased influx of people who have gone to university or an increased jump in income, with the Central California communities, you're seeing a real concern about the opposite. They're feeling increasingly left behind, and they are lower income, and so their issues can be a bit different from the other three we just talked about. But it's a very dynamic districts in this area, and a lot of them have significant Hispanic populations as well. So that's it, just for a quick rundown about why California is changing and where. And thank you for listening to that short presentation.
And thank you, Asha. It's really helpful to get, and the pun intended, I guess, the lay of the land now with all the district changes. So next, Rich is going to introduce us to Mike Levin.
Yes, thank you. And thanks to everybody so far. It's been very enlightening listening to all the candidates and the different questions that have been asked. I'm very happy to introduce Mike Levin. He is from the 49th district, which Paula and I both belong to. And it's going to be one of those districts. It's going to be a very difficult race, and we hope to be able to win that race. Mike was raised in South Orange County by a Mexican-American mother and a Jewish-American father. He is the grandson of Mexican immigrants on his mother's side. Mike attended public elementary, junior high, and high schools in the Orange County, South Orange County area, and attended high school finally in Los Angeles at Loyola. He went on to study at Stanford University, where he was honored to serve as the student body president. After college, he served in the Coro Fellows Program and attended Duke University Law School. After law school, he served as executive director of the Democratic Party for Orange County, supporting a variety of local, state, and federal political campaigns and community organizations. In addition to his political activism, Mike worked as an attorney focused on environmental and energy regulatory compliance and government affairs. Mike is a passionate believer in clean energy and has over a decade of experience in that industry, helping to accelerate the transition towards more sustainable power generation and transportation options. Mike served for several years on the board of the Center for Sustainable Energy based in San Diego and co-founded Sustain OC in Orange County. Since his first term in Congress, which began in January of 2019, Mike has established himself as a leader on climate action and clean energy, serving on the House Natural Resources Committee and the Select Committee on the Climate Crisis. He introduced legislation to transition the nation to zero emission vehicles, expand renewable energy development, and prevent future offshore drilling. Mike also serves on the House Veterans Affairs Committee and leads the subcommittee on economic opportunity. He has introduced dozens of bipartisan bills to strengthen benefits and services for our veterans and for the veterans who are homeless, and help veterans get through the past COVID-19 environment. 19 of the bills that he proposed have been signed into law either as a standalone bill or as part of a larger legislative bill. Mike lives in San Juan Capistrano with his wife, Christy, a graduate of the University of Arizona and Wharton School at University of Pennsylvania, and their 2 children.
Oh, can't hear it.
Sorry about
Hi,
that.
everyone. I'm Congressman Mike Levin, proud representative for California's 49th Congressional District, which includes North County, San Diego, and South Orange County. For those of you that don't know me, I'm an environmental attorney by background. I first ran for Congress in 2018 because I wanted to protect our planet for our 2 young kids and for future generations. Since I was elected and sworn into office in 2019, I've been proud to serve on the House Natural Resources Committee, the Select Committee on the Climate Crisis, and the House Veterans Affairs Committee. Before I talk about some of the work we've gotten done on those committees, I first want to acknowledge the frustration and concerns I know many Americans might be feeling. From gas prices to gun violence, reproductive rights to voting rights, many Americans across the political spectrum are anxious and angry about the direction of our country. I share those same concerns, and we have a lot of work to do to address those challenges. But I also believe there's reason to be hopeful too. That's because this community has seen what we can achieve when we work together to deliver real results on our local priorities. We've delivered results on getting the nuclear waste off our coast at San Onofre, including $40 million we got for the Department of Energy to restart the process of finding a new location to send the nation's spent nuclear fuel. We've also introduced the bipartisan Spent Nuclear Fuel Prioritization Act, which would prioritize moving nuclear waste first from highly populated, environmentally sensitive areas like San Onofre. We've delivered results when it comes to protecting our coastline. Working closely with the Army Corps of Engineers, we got $30 million for sand at Encinitas and Solana Beach, and $9 million more for sand in San Clemente. We secured another $11 million to protect our rail corridor that connects San Diego and Los Angeles. And we got over $5 million for flood protection in Oceanside. These are all projects that have been long overdue and are desperately needed, not only for the safety of our community, but also for our coastal economy. We've delivered results when it comes to our local infrastructure and other needs. In Oceanside, that includes $2 million for a new homeless shelter and $587,000 for the Oceanside Police Department to improve public safety by installing cameras in every one of its vehicles. We've delivered results when it comes to our water needs. We helped get $250 million for desalination as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law, and another $1 billion for water recycling, the biggest federal investments ever. And we've secured about $20 million for the Doheny Desalination Project in Dana Point. We also helped secure $300 million to clean up the Tijuana River Valley as part of the US-Mexico-Canada trade deal. We've delivered results when it comes to our veterans. As the grandson of a World War II veteran, I'm proud to chair the Veterans Affairs Subcommittee on Economic Opportunity, where we've passed 18 bipartisan bills to help our veterans that have all become law. And in addition to that, I'm proud we've just passed the Honoring Our Pact Act into law, which will help our post 9/11 veterans who were exposed to burn pits finally get the care they've deserved. We've also delivered results when it comes to getting things back on track after COVID shut everything down. You know, for all of the negative news you hear, it's important you remember that the private sector has now recovered all of the jobs lost during the pandemic and added jobs on top of that. This has been the fastest and strongest jobs recovery in American history. And it wouldn't have been possible without the actions we took last year to fix a broken COVID response, including the American Rescue Plan. Now, look, I'm as concerned about inflation as anybody, but you should know that only one party is offering serious proposals to address inflation, and it's definitely not the Republicans. So what do we propose to do? We've already passed legislation in the House on everything from oil company price gouging to ocean shipping reform to baby formula. And we've also passed the Inflation Reduction Act, a historic piece of legislation to lower costs for working families for everything from healthcare and prescription drugs to energy, all while reducing the deficit by $300 billion. The bill lowers healthcare premiums for millions of people who rely on the Affordable Care Act, saving on average about $800 a year. It's going to help families afford their medications by finally requiring Medicare to negotiate prices for prescription drugs and capping insulin costs at $35 per month for Medicare beneficiaries. It's also going to lower energy costs, strengthen our clean energy independence, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions roughly 40% by 2030. The bill makes these investments by finally requiring the largest corporations to pay their fair share in taxes. It institutes a 15% minimum tax rate on the wealthiest corporations and a 1% tax on stock buybacks. Also, and this is really important, there are no new taxes on any family making $400,000 or less, and no new taxes on small businesses. So to sum things up, this bill is going to improve the lives of millions of Americans. So I am very proud of the results we've delivered, the results we'll continue to deliver, and I'm proud of the way we've done it, working across the aisle whenever possible, not trying to tear people down, not trying to yell the loudest on cable news. And that's also how we're going to conduct this campaign. You know, my mom always taught me to be respectful, and that's what we're going to do. My Republican opponent and I, we live in the same town. We even go to the same church. We just happen to have honest differences of opinion on some profoundly important issues. I've heard his stump speech, and I think he believes what he says. And if elected, he's going to keep every commitment he's made. And I'm going to make sure the people of our district know what those commitments are, because many of them are totally out of the mainstream. During this campaign, just as one example, our opponent has said repeatedly that he wants to, and I quote, freeze and then cut, end quote, everything other than defense, Social Security, and Medicare. Those are his words, freeze and then cut. Here's what that actually means. He would freeze and then cut funding for the following agencies and the following programs that are all part of our discretionary spending every year. Federal support for fire departments and law enforcement, veteran homeless transition and suicide prevention programs, funding for clean beaches, coastal protection and drinking water, and funding to find a place for the waste at San Onofre. All of it and more would be frozen and then cut if our opponent gets his way. Do you want to see that happen? I sure don't. And when it comes to Social Security and Medicare, here's what you also need to know. If given the chance, the Republicans will do all they can to privatize and undermine these essential benefits for our seniors, and we can't let them get away with it. Some senior Republicans have said that if they get into power, they'll once again attempt to repeal the Affordable Care Act as well, along with coverage for those with pre-existing conditions. We simply can't let that happen. But before I close, I want to answer just a few of your questions. The first one I received asked about my most important accomplishment for the people I represent and what I hope to achieve if reelected. Well, thanks for that great question. It is hard to pick just one accomplishment, but I am particularly proud of my work on the Veterans Affairs Committee to strengthen benefits and healthcare for those that have served our country. You know, the committee is one of the few places in Washington where Democrats and Republicans truly come together and deliver results. And I am proud personally to have introduced 18 bipartisan bills that have been signed into law to help our veterans. It's also hard to pick just one accomplishment that I hope to achieve if I'm reelected. Two things that are top of mind are getting the nuclear waste at San Onofre off our beach as quickly and as safely as we can, and finally ending the pollution from the Tijuana River Valley. We have made incredible progress on both of those priorities in the last few years, but frankly, it's going to take a lot more hard work over the coming years to finally solve those challenges. Another question I got was about the lessons we can learn from California's leadership on the climate crisis. And thank you for that question as well. You know, I think the biggest lesson we can learn from California's success in leading the way on clean energy and climate action is that protecting our planet and growing our economy actually go hand in hand. Because California's clean energy economy is thriving at a time when our economy as a whole is thriving. I think our investments in climate action could serve as a model for the rest of the country. And I'm so excited to build on that progress with the historic climate investments that we're making, $369 billion worth in the Inflation Reduction Act. Another question I got, I want to respond about the Supreme Court's attack on a woman's right to make her own decisions about her body. Look, this decision by this extreme right-wing majority on the Supreme Court to throw out decades of judicial precedent and eliminate an established constitutional right to abortion is appalling. I was proud to co-sponsor and vote for the Women's Health Protection Act that would codify Roe versus Wade into law. We also passed something called the Right to Contraception Act in the House. That's legislation that would guarantee the right to use birth control. And the Senate needs to act on both of these bills as quickly as possible. And I also want to talk for a minute about Justice Thomas's concurrence, which made very clear that the conservative majority won't stop at Dobbs. They're going to go after things like contraception and same-sex marriage. That's why we passed something called the Respect for Marriage Act, which would enshrine marriage equality for same-sex couples, for interracial couples, as well as guaranteed by prior Supreme Court decisions. It's also paramount that every citizen, I think, recognizes the importance of their vote in protecting these most fundamental rights. So thank you for those great questions. Let me close by just saying this. I think we all know there's something greater at stake this election than perhaps ever before. And the fundamental question is this: what kind of future do we want for this country? Do we want elected officials who will stand up for democracy and the rule of law, or who are completely beholden to a cult of personality that bears no resemblance to the Republican Party of old? Do we want to reduce the deficit, as we will this year, by way over $1 trillion? Or do we want to bring back the policies from the last administration that put us in a $7.8 trillion hole? Do we want to accelerate the transition to renewable energy and lead the way on the clean energy jobs of the future? Or do we want to double down on big oil and the dirty energy policies of the past? Do we want to actually strengthen the VA and services for our veterans? Or do we want to just talk a good game while gutting and privatizing those services, as my opponent wants to do? Do we want to achieve real measures to address the gun violence epidemic in this country with a representative, that'd be me, who has an F rating, F, with the NRA? Or would you rather let the NRA and the corporate gun lobby block common sense measures that would reduce gun violence, as my opponent would do? Finally, do we want to stand up for reproductive rights, or do we want to support the Supreme Court's extreme decision overturning Roe versus Wade? You should know that on the day the Supreme Court overturned Roe, I watched as several of my Republican colleagues cheered on the House floor, and they claimed it was only the beginning of the end. My opponent not only supported overturning Roe, he celebrated. And make no mistake, if given the chance, his party will enact a nationwide abortion ban, and we can't let it happen. So those are the choices we face as we consider the future of this country. And I'm asking you to join me. Let's build a better future together. Let's keep delivering the results that we have been for this community. So I need your help. Thank you all so much for having me. And I look forward to meeting you in person, I hope sometime soon. Take care, everybody.
And I need to unmute. Aren't you proud to be a Democrat? I certainly am. These candidates are amazing human beings, principled, honorable, truthful. I'm so impressed by all of them. And I get to introduce you to one other candidate who is really exceptional. He also is an incumbent congressman, Josh Harder. And Josh Harder's family came to the California Central Valley more than 150 years ago. And his great-great-grandpa settled in Manteca and started a peach farm. Along the way, he taught his children a deep sense of public service and pride for working the land. Josh's dad is a proud small business owner, and his mom is a volunteer leader at their church. In 2018, Josh's member of Congress threatened to take health care away from the thousands of families in the Valley, the Affordable Care Act, and including his own family. And Josh decided it was time for him to step up and run for office. And he vowed he would do it differently. And he's been an amazing congressman for District 13. He refused to take a dime of corporate PAC money and instead relied on thousands of volunteers, I was one of them, to knock doors in the Valley. And we flipped that seat blue. Josh served as a congressional representative, as I mentioned, for CA District 13. And after redistricting and Representative McNerney's retirement, Josh moved to CD9, where he is now running. And he's not very well known in District 9. So if you live in that district, he needs your vote. He lives in Tracy with his wife, Pam, and his brand new baby, Lily. And he is dedicated to making the Valley safe, affordable, and a wonderful place to raise a family. So we have a video for you. Yep.
Hey everybody, this is Congressman Josh Harder from California's beautiful Central Valley. I wanted to tell you a little bit more about our race and what we're working to do out here. I'm a 5th generation resident of this district. My great-great-grandfather started a peach farm here in 1850, a long time ago. A lot's changed, but the most important issues in our community remain healthcare, jobs, and water. I've spent a lot of time working on healthcare. My little brother was born 10 weeks premature. He would have lost his health insurance if the Affordable Care Act was repealed. We worked to protect that and also to make sure that we're making healthcare more affordable, lower the cost of prescription drugs. We were able to get a bill done on that just a few weeks ago. That's incredibly important for our area. It's going to allow folks to save hundreds, even thousands of dollars per year, both on their prescription drugs and on their health insurance. And it's going to cap the price of insulin for Medicare beneficiaries at no more than $35 a month, a huge step in the right direction. We've also been spending a lot of time working on jobs and economic development because the reality is every single day we have about 100,000 folks who live in my district, who drive over the Altamont Pass for work in San Francisco, the Bay Area, we have some opportunities to make sure that we are getting more economic development here. I've been working on trying to make sure that we're building new mass transit over the Altamont and making sure that we're actually getting more processing and factories built in the Central Valley. We were able to move forward on a really exciting project of the Tracy International Park of Commerce, and there's a lot more where that came from to make sure that every single person in our area has a job that pays them a living wage and can allow them to live a life with dignity here in our community. We've also spent a lot of time working on water. It's the lifeblood of the valley. It's why my family settled here and so many others did as well. And we're working to make sure that we are safeguarding every last drop, making sure that we're stopping projects like the Delta tunnels to ship water elsewhere across the state and make sure that we have our fair share. And also think about what are the 21st century technologies, the water storage, water recycling, groundwater recharge that's necessary to make sure that we continue to have a vibrant economy and a strong foundation in agriculture that's been the root of so many jobs here over the years. The reality is this midterm election is going to be incredibly critical. My team and I flipped this seat in 2018. In 2020, it was even more dire. We were left with 5 seats between us and Kevin McCarthy holding the gavel on January 6th. This race is going to be incredibly tight. It could be decided by just a couple hundred votes, as it has been in the past. So we know how to win. We've done it before. We focus on issues that matter. We make sure that everybody understands the results and how critical this election is going to impact their loved ones. So thank you for all you're doing. I hope you'll vote from wherever you are now and help us make this election a reality. We have a lot of work to do. Thank you.
So thank you all for sticking with us. And this is, we're near the end, and Jennifer's going to close off our wonderful evening.
All right. Thank you so much, Judith. And a huge thank you to our California team for organizing this event. Thank you, Judith, for all the behind the scenes communicating with the candidates, getting everybody lined up, these phenomenal videos. And a special thank you as well to Dr. Asif Mahmood and to Christy Smith for joining us live today, and to Mike Levin and Josh Harder for sending us their videos and answering our questions. On that note, please remember that all U.S. citizens abroad can register to vote and request a ballot using the California Overseas Voting Portal or at www.votefromabroad.org. Your ballots will be sent out on September 24th, 1 month from today. And if you want to make sure you get it right on the September 24th, then you need to send in a request to ask that it be sent by email. I'd like to just give a big shout out to all of our great volunteers, both on the camera and behind the scenes. And thank you again to our participants for taking time to listen in and make an informed decision about the races on the ballot this year. We'll be sending out a link to the recording in the coming days, and we'll include Asha's wonderful presentation. Please keep in mind that Democrats Abroad is an all volunteer run and funded organization. Your support really does go a long way. A donation of just $20.22 could help us reach at least 20 California overseas voters who are actually calling right now to make sure that they're set to vote. We also hope you'll consider stepping up as a volunteer. Nobody else is doing this work, the work of reaching overseas voters, and we need your help to make sure that Californians living abroad participate in this crucial election, that they know that these races are flippable and winnable. And you can join our Slack channel. We'll put that link in the chat to get involved, or you can write to ca@democratsabroad.org. We'll end the recording now, and we just thank you so much for joining us and for helping to keep California blue and to flip these important districts and keep our incumbents in office.